Love that. Love just the simplicity of the story and the message of Jesus coming to the planet. And if you grew up in the church, you probably heard this story a whole bunch of times. Right? The wonder of a virgin who is carrying the Son of God. And as this young couple makes their way to the census, it's time to give birth to Jesus, and there's no room in the inn. No room for Jesus. Nowhere to put him, and no space for him. I love how unassuming that story is. No fanfare, no glamour to it. Just a simple entrance that the Son of God shows up onto the planet. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. And one of the things that blows my mind when I think about how Jesus came to be, how he came here, and how he showed up among us is how difficult it is for us as humanity, both at the birth of Jesus and then throughout human history. It's hard, and it has been hard, and it is hard to make room for Jesus. It was hard then. There's no space for him, and it's hard now. And I think part of the reason why it's so hard to make room for Jesus is because of the enormity of what he's really asking and the enormity of what he's really claiming at Christmas. See, that Christmas, if all Christmas is just a sweet and a sentimental time, which I think it's fine, right, if it's that. But if that's all that it is, it doesn't make sense how we interact with Jesus. If all it is the time that religion even was born, it wouldn't be so hard to make room for him. But what Jesus is claiming is even deeper than that. It goes down all the way down to the bedrock of really what affects our lives at the deepest level. Because Jesus isn't claiming when he shows up as this little baby in a manger, as he becomes a man, he's not going to claim just to be a teacher that would teach wisdom, although he does that. He's not just going to be a prophet that speaks truth, although he does that. He's going to claim to be the exclusive king, God himself. And with that claim, every human being on the planet is forced to we have to do something with that. To do something with Jesus. And what we do with him has to be either a radical acceptance and receiving of that person of Christ. Or really, it's a radical rejection and dismissal of him. There's really not any room in between because of the nature of what he's claiming. So when we come to Christmas, I think it's super important to come back and to stare at that reality again. That all the trappings of Christmas, they're all fine and good, man. I love watching Elf and Home Alone. You guys, right? You guys probably do too. I love gifts and parties, and I eat way too many Christmas cookies right around this time. It's all fun. It's all good. But down underneath all of that, there's this radical thing that shows up. The radical claim that a little baby is God. It's actually kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. We've had a hard time and a difficult time making sense of that and accepting that all since the people that have accepted that and said yes to it, their lives have been radically reoriented. And I think deep down we know that. We know that if this is real, if Jesus really is God, that there's going to be a deep displacing of all that we hold dear. All our priorities are going to be altered if I receive this God, if I receive a king who is the Lord. So here's kind of how I think of it. So let's say this bookshelf is kind of like our lives and our set of priorities. And right, we're going to have stuff that fits on these shelves in a kind of some random order based on what's really important to us at any given time. So I brought some stuff for us to put on the shelves. that help make sense of some of our priorities. So one of the things that's going to be super important to us when we think about life and how we embrace it, we would look at and we would say, my work is important. Here's going to be, this is a lumberjack. If I wasn't a pastor, I would be a lumberjack, right? That'd be my job, right? So you guys, many of us have jobs and our work is super important to us. So we would, like, at various times in our lives, maybe work would go here. Sometimes work is super important, and, right, lumberjack man goes up here, and that's, right, that's kind of what it looks like. We've got also here in the good old goodie box here, we've got my wallet. I know, it's kind of massive. Don't worry, there's like no actual money in this. This Costanzo wallet is just full of junk, right? But this will represent money. Like, money is important. I got to pay for stuff. I have to eat food. I have to live somewhere. You're nodding your head. You're like, money is important, right? It is important. That's right. Money's important. So it's got to like fit on a shelf somewhere. It's got to have some kind of priority, right? And then we've got our pets. Anybody have a dog? Anybody have a cat? I have an outdoor cat. That's where cats belong, right? Outdoors, right? So you might have a dog or a cat. You say, those are kind of important in my life. Some of us are like, my dog is really important in my life, right? I know you. I see you, dog people, right? And then sometimes there's like this trophy, which is fantastic. This is going to represent random stuff that we like to accomplish. Maybe you're in a bowling league or a softball league, or you like to win BMX races, or some other random pursuit that at the end of the pinnacle of accomplishment, you get something that costs about $4 and looks like this. This is actually not even a sports trophy. This is somebody's 4th grade Citizen of the Year award, right? It's fantastic. I don't know where I got this, right? So here we go. That's going to go somewhere. Some of us are like, you know what, man? I really love my car. I got this little Tonka truck for some fellas here or ladies who like the truck, and then I got this nice convertible pink. That one's for you, buddy. If this is yours, right? You're like, man, I really love my vehicle. I care a lot about it. It's going to show up in a big way in my life. Here, I brought my picture of Lori and I. This is, right, if you have a spouse or you want to have a spouse someday, right? This might be something that's really important. I brought a picture of my kids. I've got like 1 million kids. So here's my picture of me and my kids are going to be here. And so if you had your list of priorities, you might fill this up with different stuff, and it might change throughout your life, right? You might say, I would put different things on here today than I would have put on here maybe 5 years ago, and maybe you say, I'm going to put my technology on here, and sometimes things have become more important or less important, and now I would change this up, and I would move this down here. That's a lot of music. Wow. Here we go. Be quiet, little convertible. Here we go, right? But regardless, we are kind of choosing a set of priorities to live in. And then what happens is if I decide that I'm going to have Jesus be my God, like I'm going to make that decision and say, all right, Jesus, the thing you said is that you are God. Like, I can't actually interact with you just as like some kind of random priority down here that I get to sometimes, because you told me that if I'm going to have you as God, see a little doggy, right? I'm going to have to put you at the absolute top priority in my entire life. And what you're saying is you want to define the entirety of the bookshelf. Like that really you won't have it any other way except that you want to be like the definer and the director of my whole life. That if it doesn't work that way, then I don't really understand who you are and what you came to do. Well, that is a radical thing, man. In fact, Jesus would, right, of course, as he became older and would teach, he would say things every once in a while like this. Here's an example of one. In Luke chapter 14, he says this. Luke tells us that large crowds were traveling with Jesus. Turning to them, he said, if anyone comes after me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. So let me just slow you down here, because you're like, wait a minute, how am I supposed to hate the people that I love so much? Is that what Jesus is actually saying? We're reading this and hearing this with Northeast Ohio 2022 ears. What Jesus says this, what he really means, and what everybody would know that he means is this. That Middle Eastern love and hate looks more like this. That I'm going to love the thing that I would choose. Okay? So if I would choose or prioritize something, I love this, I've hated this. If I wouldn't choose it, I would hate it. But if I would choose it, I love it. And that choosing is the difference. And he's not saying you got to hate as in not have any affection for mom or dad or wife or children. That would be ridiculous. What he's saying is when you put me next to your other relationships, that you would choose me over everybody else. And in fact, if you won't do this, then you don't really understand who I am. You don't understand what I've come to do, because you're not seeing me as God. Right? And as we hear this, it's a little hard. It's hard to receive. It's hard to swallow. Because what Jesus is saying is he's saying, man, if you got stuff up here next to me, that you love me as much as your money, he'd actually would say, you really can't serve two masters. Because you're going to love one and hate the other. You're going to be devoted to one, despise the other. You have to make room. You have to deprioritize these pieces and make room for me. And I want the exclusive real estate on the top of this. I want to define and direct all the rest. Right? And the question that we should ask ourselves is that okay? Is that reasonable for Jesus to do that? Some of us might be thinking, Jesus, that's a lot to ask. You're like asking for all of me. And we might even wonder, is Jesus is he being a jerk by demanding kind of all of who I am and the highest priority in my life? And I think it's a good question. Here's how we might look at it. You know, when Lori and I looked at each other a little over 20 years ago and said, hey, we want to get married to each other. What we did when we said we wanted to get married to each other is we basically were looking at each other and we were asking each other the question, hey, will you pick me? Will you love me and prioritize me over every other human relationship that's available? Well, what about my mom and dad? Yep, even over them. What about my best friend? Yep, even over them. What about my hobbies? Yep, even them. Right? Above all the rest, I get this exclusive real estate in your life. Were Lori and I, were we being jerks to ask that of each other? To look at each other and request that and to say, hey, I want this from you and I'm going to give this to you. And if we can't have that, then we aren't going to have marriage. And if anything ever comes up here and rivals me, then I'm going to oppose that, and I'm going to always fight for this to have room here, and I exclusively have this right in your life and you in my life, and the only person that's allowed to have a greater allegiance to the other one is Jesus. Were we being jerks to think of it like that? And you would look at me and you say, well, of course not, Ryan. That's like how marriage works. That's how it works. You commit to one another and you have a loyalty and allegiance, and it's right and it's appropriate to look at each other and to really demand that level of loyalty from the other one. When we come up here to Jesus, really the same thought process plays out. If he is God, if that baby became the man who would lay himself down on a cross, would beat death and rise from the dead and offer you and I life, be willing to forgive us of our sin, our brokenness, be eager to have relationship with us, be eager to give us joy and peace and purpose. And say, listen, I want you to follow me because it's literally the very best thing that could happen in your life. So it's best for you. But I won't have any rivals. Nothing can come up here and compete with me. I am exclusively your God. I won't share. Just like a husband and wife would look at each other and say, I'm not going to share. No. I'm not sharing you. Jesus would look at us and say, I'm going to be the only God for you if you want to pick me. And if I can't be the only God for you, then frankly, I'm nothing at all to you. Because if you think that I can live down here somewhere, you fundamentally don't understand who I am and what I've come to do. I'm either your God or I'm not. Does that mean that we're going to live perfectly in this? No way. He knows that we're going to wrestle with this and we're going to fail and we're going to love money and we're going to sometimes idolize our marriage or the thought of getting married, and we'll have to continually come back and make room over and over and over again. That's how it works in my life. But that this is the picture that when Jesus gets a hold of my heart and my life, that he starts to radically. Car is going to be the death of me. Right? He starts to radically reorient my priorities, right? And he starts to set aside the right amount of loyalty and energy to the right areas. When that baby was born, man, it started a revolution of life change. And he would come in and say, I want to do this with you. I want to know you. I want to live life with you. I want to forgive you. I know what you did. I know where you've been. I know what you've used. I know your past. I know your tendencies. And I'm still here. And I'll be your God. But I'll only be your God if you understand what it means to have a God. It's all or nothing. It's in or out. It's yes or no. Do you want to receive me as your Lord, as your King? And I will lead you into the best places, but you got to trust me. You got to let me lead you there. Let me take you to what you're designed to become. So as we celebrate Christmas, the baby being born, what we want to recognize is that Lord that we sing about. He's not just going to come and gently offer himself and some niceties around the time that it snows. He's offering something much deeper, much more radical, much better, frankly. So here's the question, right, that we want to wrestle through. Here's the question. Whether it's for the first time or the first time in a long time, will I make room for Jesus? Will I take the pieces that are up here, whatever it is, a job or the hobby or myself, future spouse or the kids, you name it. Right? All kinds of stuff can go up here. Will I choose to allow Jesus to define where those are placed in my life? If this is the first time you've ever made this decision, simply looking at the person of Jesus and saying, okay, Christ, I see what you did. You came here as a baby, laid yourself down. You offered yourself on a cross for me so that I might have forgiveness of my sins and have eternal life. Now I have access to all this, to the joy and the peace and the purpose that only you can bring. If you've never said yes to that, it's simple, not easy, simple. It's just telling Jesus that. I believe it, Lord. I need forgiven. I need you. I want to choose today to make you Lord in my heart and in my life. And if you've never made that call, nothing will alter you as deeply as that. You will find what you're looking for. Does not mean that your problems will go away or that everything gets easier, but there's a satisfaction that can only be found in Jesus. And the guilt and the shame that we all experience is erased because Jesus paid for it on the cross. Guys, the rest of us, we live in some version of being in and out of this. Right? Some of us, you're here and it's been a while since you heard about Jesus or been to church. And when we think hard and we're real honest, we recognize that there's some rivals up here. Right? And the question that I have to keep coming back to, and maybe you do too, is will I remove those? And will I keep making room? Giving him the due space, what he deserves in my heart, in my life. What if this Christmas was just different? What if it sparked something? A change, a renewal. Maybe new life for some of us. For the first time, a hope that we have never known that was available. What if it wasn't just a special moment where we got to hang out with fam, and it was more than that. We found a God in the process. If you've never made that decision or need to make an adjustment to make room for Christ, would you do that today? We'll have the band come out. I'll pray for us. Love for us just to wrestle that through, really face it this Christmas. Lord, we're blown away all over again, Lord. That you would come to the planet, enter into our space, our brokenness, our fatigue, our sin, and you would be willing to lay yourself down here just to have us, just to be our God and our King. Lord, when we deserve none of that. But I pray that you would help us to see your great love and passion for us, passion for our souls. Help us to believe that we can trust you to define and direct, to lead our lives far better than we can lead them on our own. We choose to trust you today. Christmas. Meet us here, Lord, even now.